'Twas the pod before Christmas, when all through the channel not a sea wolf was stirring, not even a ramble. The topics were hung in the chat with care, and hopes that the recording would soon be there. The Lexies were all nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of rookie quarterbacks danced in their heads. And Jingles in his numbers, and Cy in his Saints cap. But I'd also just settled in for a long playoff snap. When out on the turf there rose such a chatter, Danny sprang from the couch to see what was the matter. Away to the window, Cy flew like a bird, tore open the shutters to see what was the word. The moon on the breast of a new fallen flag gave the luster of a touchdown celebration, complete with swag. When what to Cy's wondering eyes should appear but a miniature ram and 8, probably not reindeer. With golden horns and a sheet with the spread, Cy knew in a moment it must be Saint Red. The more rapid the eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Burrow, now Yoshi, now Chase and Higgins. On Hubbard and Jaceki and Genos and Mims. To the top of the board, to the top of them all. Now pass away, pass away, pass away the ball. So up to the stands from the concourse they flew, with a sleigh full of hope, and also you too, Blue. And then, in a stomping, Cy heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As Cy drew his head, and he was turning around, down the chimney the ram came with a bound. He was dressed in all fur, from his head to his hoof, and his clothes were all bad jokes, oh my, oh wolf. A bundle of cope he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry, his cheeks were like snow, his nose, nothing like a cherry. His big old mouth was wide open in stance, the gleam in his eye like there was somehow a playoff chance. A jersey on his back and some pep in his step, his gait alone showed that he was a clueless old shep. He had a broad face and a big giant head that shook when he laughed like he was going to pop a thread. He was hopeful and delusional, a right jolly old ram, and Cy laughed when he saw him, in spite of the win. A wink of his eye and a twist of his horn soon told Cy that he was not yet ready to mourn. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work and filled all the topics and turned with a jerk. And laying a finger aside of his nose, he gave a nod and up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team he gave a whistle, and away they all flew like that of a missile. But Cy heard him explain ere he drove out of sight. Hey, everybody, it's time for another wonderful edition of the Jersey Tales!
Yay! That was an amazing poem. Oh my
Oh, man.
gosh.
Did ChatGPT wrote that for you?
No, myself, I swear.
However much time you put into that, it was too much.
Oh my god. That is a
Like all day
ChatGPT
yesterday.
poem. Oh
It was
my
not.
goodness. Hey, if it was, I'm not gonna judge. I won't tell. I won't tell.
I
The
will.
shame of the matter is, if the Bengals put as much effort into that, into their play calling as you put into that, they might actually be in the playoffs this year.
Right?
Maybe on the defensive side of the ball. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to our Christmas special, I guess. Because that's what this is. Well, who all do we have on tonight's show? Well, hey, Blue's back.
Any messages for me while I was out?
Yeah, there's a lot. But we can't get into those on the air. Danny's here.
Hello.
Jingles is back.
Treat yourself around a sausage.
We don't know either, folks. Cy's here.
Hey, howdy, howdy.
We got producer Lexi in the booth.
Hey, yo.
And it's me, Red the Van. Welcome everybody to the Jersey Tales. All right, let's just go off because I'm going to be the delusional one. Because like the crazy part is like I had a ton of edits ready to go in the event that we actually lost that game against the Browns, and I was so glad I didn't have to rewrite all that. So, as of right now, there's like 11.4% chance that the Bengals can make the playoffs. So it's an improvement over last week. So we moved up like 2 whole percentage points. What we have to have happen is Bengals have to win out. And then we need, ideally, Pittsburgh to beat the Chiefs on Christmas Day so that they won't rest the starters, and then they beat Denver. Plus, we also need Miami and the Colts to lose at least one game. Which, it doesn't sound so crazy now, maybe? Especially since we didn't lose to the Browns. So, like, hey, yay, we actually swept an AFC opponent this year. Go us. But yeah, I mean, I'm still hopeful because I'm going to be there. I'm going to be at the Denver Cincinnati game, and I think I've got close to 50-yard line tickets again. So I'm going to do my part. Like I'm pulling out all the stops. Me and my dad together are undefeated at Bengals games, so we're going to do our best to get them going. So we'll be there on Saturday, and I'm looking forward to it. So. But Stylox, am I crazy? You can tell me I'm crazy. It's okay.
No, you're crazy. You
Okay.
are absolutely crazy. The Bengals aren't making the playoffs. We've had this discussion before. Hey, listen, it's good to have hope, but the Bengals are not making the playoffs. Not if the Indianapolis Colts have anything to say about it. Like, did you see Anthony Richardson yesterday? Playing like the rent was due, like he was told he was going to get benched if he put out another stinker. No, the Colts are going to keep the Bengals from making the playoffs, my friend.
All right, I'm going to go tell him right now if he doesn't put out another stinker, he's going to get benched, and then maybe that'll fix it. Because I'm sure that he's just going to be like, who the hell is this guy? Like, why are you wearing a fursuit not at my door?
I mean, he might give you a signed jersey, but the Bengals aren't making the playoffs, and look, as a fellow fan of a team who's not making the playoffs, I get it. You want to have hope, but hope is fleeting for the Cincinnati Bengals, and sooner or later they're going to get knocked out, and you just got to accept that.
The thing is right now, and the only way that's good, it'll come down to the very last week if we win out on whether or not we get to be in. Now, are you officially eliminated?
Yeah, the Saints have been eliminated. I think they got eliminated on Sunday when because the only way we could have gotten in would have been winning the division. So when Atlanta won, that pretty much, tied things up and we were knocked out.
Yeah, but see, we had 3% chance when all this started. And then we bumped up to 9.6%. And now we're at 11. So we're moving in the right direction. So, like,
Well,
all I got's hope.
as a Browns fan, let me say, first of all, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And second of all, if you approach it like a Browns fan does, you just never expect to make the playoffs anyway. And then that way, when they do, it's a pleasant surprise. But when they don't, it's not really a great disappointment because you didn't expect it to happen anyway. That being said, I do have to agree with Silex. I think the Colts would have to mess up to miss the playoffs. The Bengals the Bengals can beat Denver. I think they definitely can. The Steelers are another matter. That's a pretty tough game. It is a divisional game and anything can happen in those, but that is asking a lot. Meanwhile, Indianapolis has the Giants and Jags to finish the season, and both of them are terrible. So, like I said, the Colts would have to seriously mess something up to not win out. And so, honestly, that really that favors Indianapolis.
I mean, it does, but also it could happen.
Now, in the Bengals' defense, the Jags do have to, the Colts do have to play the Jags, and that is a division opponent. And as we know, division opponents tend to get up for those games regardless of how the season's going. But, logic says the Colts have a chance to run the table with these next two teams. So, there's just not a lot of hope to be had in Bengal world, I guess. I don't know. I envy your optimism for your team because I sure as heck don't have any more on my end.
Well, see, that's what happens when you have there's still a chance. So you're telling me there's a chance. Because that's all I got is a chance. It was like last year. Like last year, I was the same way. Because yeah, Browning's playing great all of a sudden magically because Burrow's hurt and like there's still the chance. And then it came down to like, I think it was decided this week last year because I think that was our blowout loss to Kansas City. Well, it wasn't even a blowout loss. Like it was a close loss. But the thing that was crazy is that our defense actually worked this weekend, and our offense was kind of struggling. I mean, it was still like Burrow was still Burrow, but like it wasn't like I'm having to hang 38 points up just to win the game.
But and we had this discussion last week on the podcast. Is it advantageous for the Cincinnati Bengals to go ahead and make the playoffs and get bounced in the first round? What does that achieve when they should? I'm not saying tank. I don't want to say tank because that implies that tanking exists in the NFL, and officially it doesn't. It does, but it doesn't. So wouldn't it be more in their favor to just lose these last two games and secure a better draft spot so they can build towards next season, as opposed to, who knows, they could go on a run and, well, okay, see, there is that optimism we're bringing up.
It's
But-
contagious, isn't it?
I'm strictly looking at this from an outsider position. I have no stake in what the Bengals do either way. To me, it seems like it's better for them to get a much better draft pick to address the defense for next year than potentially get a higher draft pick that won't pan out. And I've likened this to, if you've ever watched the NBA and you're the 7th and 8th seed, you make the playoffs, but obviously you're not good enough to contend. I don't think the Bengals are good enough to contend this year, even with how otherworldly Burrow has been playing. That defense is going to hold them back from, beating a legitimate contender in the AFC. So I just,
Well, here's the question then. Like, so my argument was like, first off, we had a competent ownership. If we make it to the playoffs, they could then sign some folks to the defense to try and help address some of the deficiencies and try to get some help there. Like if it was a competent ownership, we know it's not, but like, if it was, that could be one of the big things that you could do. Which even with a middling defense, this team becomes a Super Bowl contender.
absolutely.
Just because how good the offense is. Now, I haven't heard yet how bad Mims' injury is. If Mims is done, we're in trouble. Which is just ridiculous that like this mountain of a man is what our entire O-line hinges on, but it's true. Because when
Listen.
he went down, because like before he went down, our running game, like the Browns could not stop our running game. And the moment that he was taken out, it was very much easy to contain Brown. And he was already looking like a superstar at the beginning of the game, and then all of a sudden could barely get a yard. So that's the other part too, is we also don't have the depth. But they're not going to fix that anyway with the high draft position. So
They're not, but it goes a long way to adding a star player or someone who can immediately come in and contribute. As opposed
I mean, that's what Mims
to-
was. We drafted him last year. He was our first round pick, and boy howdy, they finally got one. And if you have no idea who Mims is, we were there at the Steelers game, and the defensive lineman got up in his face, and Mims is like looking down at him like fee fi fo fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman,
Mhm.
I don't know. I want to have hope because I got tickets left to go, and I just want to be excited for my team. Heck, last year I was there for the Browns game when they rested their starters, and we clobbered them, and it was the most fun experience that I think I've had in the Bengal Stadium outside of the revenge games. The one against like the LA Rams that year. That was awesome too. Speaking of which, Danny.
Yes.
Danny got to come down to a Bengals game.
Yeah, and I've been going down there for 3 years, and you finally got me to try Skyline. Well, let me tell you, that was the most mid food you could have ever given me. So
Okay.
bad. I
Why
don't
you-
care how many I don't care how much mountain of cheese you put on that chili. There is no flavor to it. It needs spice. It needs something, which surprises me because you're like south adjacent. Like, where's the flavor? Where's the spice? What are you doing? How do you have this horrible culinary disaster and it's just popular? Which really makes me double think actually moving to Cincinnati, but that's aside the point.
It's
mean-
it's an acquired taste. It takes 3 or 4 tries to actually really get into liking it. And I say this as somebody who still will not have a 3-way or 5-way or a 7-way or whatever, however many ways they have. But the Conies every once in a while I go, I really just need to shove a tiny hot dog covered in cheese into my face.
Yeah. So the thing is I'm not from here, and I'm not a big Skyline person. I don't like Skyline. I don't even like it as the hot dog side of things with the Conies. Now, Gold Star was the Bengals, like chili of choice or whatever in the stadium, back when we went to the Super Bowl. So the moment they changed the Skyline, we haven't been back since. So, argument aside, Gold Star's better as far as the Conies go, and it's better seasoned, and I just like it better. But like everyone here, they're just obsessed with it, and it's like this is why we don't go out to eat together. And like, well, why not? And it's like because I have a palate. But that's a discussion for a different time period. I was more wondering.
If you think of what the game of football is, for most people, it's an excuse to drink beer. I'm sorry. So here you are in the cold, drinking beer in the perfect environment to enjoy a chili dog covered in a mountain of cheese, and it just falls flat.
Yeah.
Which ultimately kind of also describes my experience in that game of like, oh my god, this is going to be super exciting. I'm going to watch this team whoop up on the Steelers. It's going to be wonderful. And what the heck just happened?
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, I will admit, it was hilarious. We had that 3 and out right at the start. You went away to get a beer. Somebody threw a pick 6. You came back, looked at me, and you're like, "Did I miss anything important?" Not at all. Thanks for the beer.
Yeah. Every time I would leave to go get beer, we would be a better team. And so I'm like, I'm just gonna go stand in the beer line. And like people were just like, "Are you in line?" Kinda.
Kind of. It's because if I'm here, I'm a bad luck charm. So just need to keep getting beer. But outside of that,
Yeah.
it's really weird. Buffalo, when I looked at it, I think the stadium's like 10,000, 15,000 people bigger than Paycor, which kind of addresses the first thing I noticed, which is your game isn't that loud. It was pretty quiet that whole time. It was pretty demure. And Sutton, like at a Bills game, it's loud, it's awesome. You can't hear anyone think. It's wonderful. And at the Bengals game, I'm like, what are we like? Anyone gonna do anything? Is this it?
Well,
What
to
are
be
we
fair, we
doing?
were also on the opposition side because we were late getting the tickets.
Sure. Still, nonetheless, like, I've been in that stadium. It's been pretty loud. Paycor was not that loud. I'm sorry. Y'all have better music. Your fight song is something. It's definitely one of the songs of all time. Um, oh boy.
That we agree on.
Yeah. Let me tell you, going from Shout, which everyone is singing to at the top of their lungs, 70,000 people, to Paycor, Bengal Growl, and you're like, oh, yeah, this team is definitely from the 60s, ain't it? Oh, probably should have updated that 20 years ago. Anyway, 6,000 more seats? Thanks, Jingles. I knew it was somewhere up there, but you don't think that 6,000 means anything. But it does, because it means 30 less minutes to wait for a bathroom. Sorry, Ralph Wilson Stadium. You kind of are poorly designed at that angle. It means I don't have to sit in a parking lot for 3 hours waiting to leave because the game ended at 11 and it's now 2 in the morning and I can finally go home. That's 6,000. That really adds something to the atmosphere of a game. But other than that, it was really fun. I had more fun at the dinner afterward. But yeah, go Bengals.
I mean, we also do have "Welcome to the Jungle," which is like our unofficial fight song.
And like that one. Okay, that one wins. Though I don't know. Now that we finally got Mr. Brightside, it's kind of working for us. So
For the touchdown stuff, it's the at the I no, but when they do the touchdown though, they play the I don't want to work. I just want to bang on my drums all day. And then after the kick is good, then they'll do the Bengal growl.
Speaking of which, oh my god, you need to hire a different audio designer because they just cut the song halfway through and then started again. So come on. Gotta think of a different way to do this.
Yeah, hold it down. That being said, how's the Bills doing?
Well, boy, howdy. Well, those who don't know, I'm probably the most negative Bills fan on the earth. Partly because I still expect them to go back to the mid-2000s form. You know, ostensibly, everyone's like, oh boy, go Bills. They're Super Bowl juggernauts. They're awesome. However, I'm a data person. And the one thing that definitely has me worried is right now the Bills are a team that their points against is 331 compared to most other teams. And that fact that we are scored on 30, 40 points in a game is not lost upon me. And in many ways, I argue the Bills are just the opposite side of the coin of the Bengals. The Bengals have a really good offense with a really bad defense that gets scored on a lot and then loses in the most heartbreaking of fashions. And the Bills are just like the opposite bounce. One ball goes a different direction, one throw goes a different way. Allen goes back to form and throws another interception, and yep, here we go, we're losing again. So, like watching that New England game yesterday was not fun. Just like, are we gonna do something? Are we gonna get back to form? Are we gonna do what we did to the Lions at some point here? These are just the Patriots, guys. But we can play a game. We don't have to, scoot down and meet the competition. We can play at our top level as we always do. Why are you trying to lose this game? We'll see, but it's got me worried.
Hey, what's up? All right, so just a little update. First off, just a little update on our playoff picture thus far. So, as it stands today, not including tonight's game, right now we have the Chiefs and the Lions. They are going to be your first round buys. Now, it is still possible for the Vikings and the Eagles, at least in the NFC, to make a run for that first round spot. We also have, in the AFC, you have the Bills, Steelers, Texans, Ravens, Chargers, and Broncos. They are currently in the playoffs. Chargers and Denver still need to officially clinch, with Indy, Miami, and of course, everyone's favorite team from Cincinnati, the Bengals, still in the hunt. Crazy as that sounds. Now, for the NFC. Green Bay, Washington, Tampa, and Seattle. Those teams have not yet clinched, but any one of those teams can still make it. Point being, the playoffs are here. They're going to be very exciting. I think a lot of people expect the Chiefs to be in the AFC title game. I'm not so sure about that. If you had asked me a few weeks ago, I would have said yes. Now, I'm not so sure. One thing I am sure about is this. The Lions, the Eagles, and the Bills are Super Bowl contenders. They are the three best teams in the National Football League. You cannot convince me otherwise. And just to go recap some games yesterday, something that struck me that I've been seeing from both the Panthers and the Raiders. Two teams who have, hit rock bottom this year. The Raiders with their quarterback issues. Not Garoppolo. Oh gosh, who was their quarterback? They played in Jacksonville. Forgot his name.
Gardner Minshew.
Minshew being out for the year, and of course the perennial issues that we've seen with Bryce Young. Both of those teams have battled back. They have not quit on their coaches. They haven't quit on Dave Canales, nor have they quit on Antonio Pierce. And that's good to see heading into next season. So if you're a fan of both the Panthers or the Raiders, you kind of have hope to hang on, especially Bryce Young. Bryce Young has sneakily looked really good down the stretch. I'm not sure what happened, if that little stint at Raising Cane's made him realize he needs to play better at football, but he is looking like a serviceable quarterback. And obviously, we'll see what the Raiders do in the draft. Aiden O'Connell is not the long-term answer. Neither is Minshew. But if I'm fans of either of those teams, I'm feeling pretty good despite everything that's going on. I'd say the same for the Patriots as well. Even though they lost to the Bills, I think they're in a pretty good spot, especially with their quarterback situation. Drake May might be the best quarterback from this class. Sorry, Lexi. But that remains to be seen. But yeah, just a little update on that. Normally I would talk about the Saints, but I don't want to talk about anything as sad and depressing and morbid as New Orleans Saints because there's nothing fun in that. It's just dark and brooding. It's like a DC film. It's just dark and brooding and not fun, and no one wants to see that. Hey, you're welcome.
I don't know what else to say.
That's either a good thing or a bad thing, and nobody knows.
That's true. Lexi, what were they doing with your stadium? I know you want to
So
talk
the
about.
government,
Hang on. I know you want to talk about your playoff chances because that's the most exciting time of the year, right? But
actually, stadium's probably more important at the moment.
yeah, because it's like falling apart.
Yep. So the government actually did something right for once. They passed the RFK bill at the final moment at 1:59 in the morning, which, if you don't know, DC did not control the RFK Stadium site. It was up to the government. So now this gives DC full control over the RFK site so they can now demolish it. And then the Commanders can finally move back to DC where they've always wanted to go and move back to the RFK Stadium site and build a stadium, which they want to build a dome.
Okay, so you missed it. I set you up for a bit.
Of course, the split second I step away to get another drink of water. Hadn't said anything in 10 minutes.
That's why I was setting you up for something. So, Lexi, just to recap real quick, and then I'll just be quiet, and Lexi will cut this part out. Lexi was complaining about the fact that you guys were doing a dome, and I said basically that it's not going to make the Browns any better, but it's just going to make the AFC North worse.
I agree 100%. I think the dome is stupid. I think I honestly I don't think the site that the Haslams have proposed is particularly bad. It's located on two major interstates. It's right next to the airport. It's right next to a public rail line. In that sense, it's a completely sensible site. Honestly, in some cases, probably better than their legacy site on the lakefront. But I hate domes. I think it's stupid. I think it's one of the it would eliminate one of the few advantages the Browns actually have, all in the name of slightly increasing the profit of a guy who clearly has no idea what to do with the money he has. And I'm against it just purely on principle because every sports decision that Jimmy Haslam has made has been wrong. Signing Johnny Manziel was wrong. Signing Deshaun Watson was wrong. Trying to rename the Columbus Crew was wrong. And so the fact that he thinks building a dome is right just automatically makes me assume that it too is wrong.
Well, here's my issue with this, and we agree. I think for certain teams and cities, there needs to be an open air stadium. Like Buffalo, thank God they're not doing this, but Buffalo should never, ever, ever have a dome. And I'd argue the same with Nashville. That stadium should not be a dome. Like the weather down there is not bad enough to where they need a dome. But if you've noticed, what a lot of these owners are doing is they are seeing the potential in what other sports, and for some it's a Super Bowl. Although I would caution Mr. Haslam if he's thinking he can get Super Bowls on a perennial basis. That's not going to happen. I don't think Cleveland has the hotel space to even do that. But
Even once, yeah.
I
yeah,
think they might downtown, but unfortunately, the area where they're moving, they very certainly do not.
so
It's an it's literally an industrial park. There's nothing there.
right. So if that's one of his goals, and it probably is, along with maybe the NCAA tournament, every now and then.
Not in
might
Cleveland.
you say that, but again, that's why these owners do that though, because they're trying to maximize that profit. It can't just be let's have a stadium that's open for 8 games out of the year and maybe playoffs. No, they want it filled almost 24/7 with something, and that's a big monetary generator for some of these cities that host, especially the national title game. Like,
Is he paying for
generates
it?
revenue. Oh,
Or is
I-
the city
that I
paying
don't-
for it?
that I don't know. Blue Streak would know better than I would on that.
Blue, is the owner paying for that, or
He's trying to get money out of the city. It's
Yeah.
it's a
Oh
it's
my
a work
God.
in progress. I believe there's multiple lawsuits that have been filed already. It's messy. It's going to get messier because the city doesn't particularly want to be left with a stadium with no tenant.
So
Right.
Jimmy Haslam, just for people who don't know, him and I think his brother, but they started the whole Pilot Flying J truck chain. This man is worth $8.5 billion, and I get it. That doesn't mean the man has $8.5 billion just lying around in money somewhere. But just to put it in perspective, this is a billionaire. The NFL is a multi-billion-dollar organization. You are telling me the NFL and Jimmy Haslam cannot afford to build a stadium somewhere within the Cleveland suburbs. They have to rely on taxpayer money to do this. And this is a whole other topic that's probably not for this podcast. But it is a crime that Mr. Haslam and Mr. Goodell cannot front most, if not all, of this money for this dome stadium. And they don't, like I said, they don't need a dome stadium. The AFC North is perfect football. You know why? Because it's football as it used to be played. Tough, gritty, blue collar, take your garbage pail or take your lunch pail to work, hard hitting football. It's played out in the elements. That's going to go away if they build a dome stadium.
Right.
And it sucks.
And to add to that, I mean, there are games that the Bengals have lost to Cleveland that they only lost because there just happened to be a big giant storm cloud that just sat over that stupid stadium.
Yeah, well, one of the only highlights of the entire Browns season this year was the snow game against the Steelers, which
Yeah.
they played great in and won.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's pretty much the only good thing that's happened to that team this season, let's be honest, and it happened because of the weather.
It's like all of the teams that sit there and was like, oh, Peyton Manning, he's only good in a dome. You know what we should do? We should build a dome so when he comes to play here, he's going to be really good. It's a stupid thing.
It's dumb, but it's the fad now, and it's in football. It's the fad. These owners want to increase that revenue stream, and that's how you do it. Because I guarantee, and this is no shot at Buffalo or whatever. You know how pretty much any team that builds a new stadium gets a Super Bowl. The league's not going to put a Super Bowl in Buffalo. They should, because that'd be an amazing atmosphere. But one, logistically, it wouldn't work. But they're looking at it from, well, all these wealthy people who come and allegedly watch the game. I don't know what they do in those, luxury boxes, but they're going to freeze their butts off. There might be a snowstorm.
I can't wait to see all of the stars wearing the NFL hat.
Like, people don't realize we miss. So when the new Meadowlands or MetLife Stadium, when that first opened, they missed a huge snowstorm by 1 week. There is a reason why
One
the
day.
NFL. What's up?
One
it a day?
day. Yeah, one
Yeah.
day.
One day. There is a reason why the NFL has not been back to the New York City metropolitan area. Because they know that even though it can logistically host a Super Bowl, the people with the money will freeze their butts off, and they don't want that. However, real football, quote unquote, should be played outdoors. Like, I would love it if they played the Super Bowl in non-dome stadiums a lot more. You know, logistics be damned. Like, they should do that, especially up north in the harsh weather. Like, don't get me wrong, New Orleans, Miami, Phoenix, I forgot the other city, LA, and I guess Vegas is in the rotation now.
Well, I
They're-
mean, you got Dallas over there, you know, and there is
Oh, yeah.
there's some
Dallas
curtain
only
makers.
Dallas
there's-
only hosted one Super Bowl since it opened in
Yeah,
2010.
But there's some curtain makers that are sitting there like licking their chops, thinking about the money they can make when they fix that whole sun problem that
Yeah.
Jerry was complaining about.
Oh, you know what's even worse? Jacksonville. They're building a dome stadium in Jacksonville. Jacksonville
great.
is warm most of the year. Like, that is so asinine. Pardon my friend. It's asinine. They're building a dome stadium there. Like, what are
Well,
we doing?
Okay. I will give Jacksonville a little bit of leeway because I've had to do work in Jacksonville, and there are a few. There's only one other city that I've been miserable in, other than Jacksonville, and that was Houston. Like, it is so hot and so humid during huge portions of the year down there that, like, okay, I'm gonna give you a pass. Also, how do we know how bad the hurricane is until we see your dome get ripped off? I mean, come on.
Oh, whoa, okay, hold up now. You're bringing back bad memories. We just had a hurricane do that
That
to
ripped-
Tropicana Field. Granted,
know.
that's an upgrade for Tropicana Field. No
Yeah.
offense, but, you know. I don't think anyone in Jacksonville wants to see their shiny $1 billion stadium, you know, get ripped to shreds. Maybe. I don't know. The point
Oops,
is,
you got a convertible.
I'm not touching that. The point is, no one, even though it's Jacksonville, and I understand that Florida is extremely humid. That's also why the Trop was built, because that part of Florida is extremely humid. However, it's just weird to me that warm places do this. And to an extent, again, I get it. Same with New Orleans. It's stupidly humid down there. I get why the dome was built, you know. But some places, they really shouldn't. Like Nashville, that does not need to be a dome. I get why they want to do that, but that doesn't need to be a dome. Same with Cleveland. Same with DC. I get it. They want to host Super Bowls. Problem is, where they're going to build that stadium, the logistics is not going to be great, even though there's metro access, even though there's allegedly a streetcar there. It's not going to be great. You know, don't build a dome just because other owners do it, you know? But that's just how I
That's what a lot of it boils down to is the owners see a shiny new thing and they want a shiny new thing too. And these folks they're not where they are because they're particularly creative people. They just want to copy what everyone else has. And right now, the cool thing that everyone wants is a dome. Once upon a time, you know, it was a cookie cutter or you know, an open air stadium or whatever, you know, take your pick. But right now it's a dome, and so they all say, "Hey, I want what they got in Minnesota. I want what they got in Los Angeles.
Well, hang on,
I
whoa,
want a
whoa, whoa.
shiny dome."
You said Minnesota. They didn't get a dome. They got a sand crawler. Let's be fair. It's not quite a dome. It's a Star Wars sand
They
crawler.
got
It's
a
sand crawler.
magnificent piece of modern art. I'll give them that.
It's a Viking
beautiful
ship.
stadium. It is actually a beautiful stadium. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of dome stadiums, but that's one of my favorite.
Y'all forgetting about one
it's-
other city that wants a dome. Chicago.
Chicago should try to get a football team first.
See, it's again, they want to suit. Well, they have the space. They have the you know, logistics to host one. But again, the McCaskies, what do they want? Oh, we can host a Super Bowl there. Oh, Final Four. Rah, rah, rah. They don't need a dome. It's not Chicago football. It's not. Chicago football is known to be what? Awful, but on occasion, tough, gritty, punch your mouth and take your teeth, whatever that phrase is called, not we're gonna play in a dome and it's just weird. I don't get it. It boggles my mind. Like LA should never have been a dome. I'm sorry.
I
Los
agree.
Angeles should
Oh no,
never
no,
have been
no,
a
no!
dome.
It absolutely should have been a dome because everyone knows that people in California are soft. It's fine.
Well,
So
we've known
let's
that for a
see.
while.
You have to handle 75-degree weather outside for 3 hours. Come on.
You have to wear a jacket with
Sweater.
60 degrees.
Nobody goes to those games anyway.
Yeah, Lexi. Did that cover everything that you were looking for when your stadium topic that Cy totally took?
I'm sorry. I feel bad. I'm sorry, Lexi.
I could ramble. I can do that.
How
After
you feeling?
after yesterday's performance from Michael Penix, I feel alright. It's just the biggest challenge will be next Sunday night against the Commanders on the road for the division title. My thing is the off season coming up, and everyone's saying like, oh, they're going to they're going to cut Cousins, or they're going to trade Cousins. If you look at the scenarios for either trading or cutting Cousins, because everyone wants them thinking that they're cutting Cousins before the new physical year, March 16th, which they owe him an extra 10 mil fully guaranteed. If they cut him, the Falcons will have $65 million of dead cap going into 2025. If they don't cut him, if they cut him after the physical year, we have a dead cap in 25 and 26. We split it out. But the very interesting one is if you cut him pre-June 1st, the dead cap goes up to 75 million. So that's the thing. You got to cut him before the new year starts to save 10 million. But in the long run, are we going to do what the Broncos are doing with Russell Wilson? I think that the same way that the Broncos did with Russell Wilson is probably the same way that we're going to do with Kirk Cousins. The difference is they spend 88 million, we're only going to spend 65 million on it. And so we got 25 million to flex around from the off season. And it's actually the good time to do it because if we cut him the next year, the dead cap will go up to 70 million. On top of, we also gotta make a 5th-year option commitment to Drake London, which is another 20 million right off the bat. So I think this would be a good decision for the Falcons to do it right now before all of our 3 first-rounders 5th-year options kick in.
But I guess the real question is, even if they do all this, are they still going to be able to win a Super Bowl, even if they're up 20-3 at the half?
With Raheem Morris as the head coach, improve that defense first and foremost. My God, you only got 10 sacks for the whole entire season. You're a so-called defensive coordinator alongside with the McVay tree that you won a freaking Super Bowl with.
Well,
Where's the defense?
I think you just said what the problem was. It's the McVay tree.
The thing is, we just got to focus what we have now, and when the future gets here, we'll worry about it. That's how I feel. We went from going with the Packers plan to going to the Broncos plan, all within a calendar year.
Hey, that's me.
Yeah, I got you a new soft serve ice cream flavor.
Yeah, a little bit of volunteer orange.
Rocky Top.
Yeah, that
Kind of
was
like Rocky Road, except for,
It was certainly a rocky road for the Vols in Tennessee, in Columbus on Saturday. That was officially a one-sided football game. What I was left wondering is where on earth was this offense against Michigan? My goodness.
they're busy drafting legislation, apparently at Capitol Hill. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just a state representative trying to get his name in the news, and hey, he succeeded. But yeah, that was probably the best game they've played all year. and really, really rebuilt my confidence in Ohio State heading into their next round against Oregon in the Rose Bowl. The other thing I was left wondering is where was all of the bad mouthing that Southern Methodist in Indiana got? Where was all of that about Tennessee? I mean, I know ESPN has a bit of a contract with Tennessee's conference, which they don't have with Indiana or SMU, but they got blown out just as badly, if not worse, than those other two teams. And there's really hasn't been a lot of talk about how they didn't deserve to be there.
Oh no, they covered it for 3 whole hours. They just covered it like right after it happened. Now they'll keep talking terribly about SMU and Clemson and Indiana, and even Clemson like was at least somewhat competitive. But
honestly, I in the case of Indiana, I really think that first drive made all the difference in the game. I think if they'd scored there rather than the turnover, I think that game may have gone very differently than it did. Just the combination of the turnover and then immediately giving up a 98-yard touchdown play, that just totally rattled Indiana's confidence, and they were never able to recover from that.
Yeah, and we all knew that Indiana was going to be the weakest.
Yeah, and I mean they haven't won a game in South Bend since 1898. Like the odds were against them from the start.
And the crazy part is that they actually made the Irish look good in a playoff game, which that never happens.
Well, I'll tell you, if there's a team that has a gift route to the finals, it's Notre Dame.
Yeah, I am salty that they seeded it to where Ohio State has to now, because like my pick is Oregon to win it all.
Mm-hmm.
But like, could you go and knock out a couple more SEC teams first?
I mean, the teams that spent the most weeks at number one this season were Oregon and Texas, both of whom are in the same side of the bracket, along with Ohio State, who played Oregon within a point in Eugene earlier this season. And it's been revealed this afternoon that Carson Beck is out with shoulder surgery. It was elbow surgery, maybe it was. Either way, he's not coming back. So Notre Dame suddenly gets to go up against Georgia's backup. And then they get to play the winner of Penn State and Boise State, or whoever wins that game does.
Yeah, because I am this.
They rolled out the red carpet for that one.
Yeah. Because also I've got an active bet with Bunt right now. That because my whole argument is the SEC's soft this year. And because I have the proof in the pudding, right? Because every time that Vandy goes to a bowl game, it just means that the SEC sucks this year. It's fine. It's just well documented. It's not like Vandy gets better. It's the rest of you teams get worse, and then Vandy actually just sneaks a couple wins in. Though I wasn't really expecting beating Alabama to be on one of those lists, but hey, you know what? We'll take it. But I have a bet going on with Bunt right now that if any other conference wins the national title, I win. But if the SEC wins the title, I have to buy a Georgia jersey and post a picture. So I am pulling for everybody else. Come on, Nike money. You got this going.
It wasn't shocking to me when SMU and Indiana and Clemson lost. What was also not shocking to me was ESPN's full deep throating of the SEC.
Until Tennessee. And then it was like, well, maybe they didn't belong there and said we should have put Alabama in, and that's their fault. It's like, they beat Alabama.
It like clockwork. And I guarantee you're going to hear Paul Feinbaum get on TV, do what he does, and find a way to just destroy, the likes of SMU and Indiana. Oh, how could they be in there? They didn't beat anybody. Alabama, rah, 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 rah. And you've already seen that in that discourse, though, on social media and from, certain, pundits. Here's the fact of the matter, though. both Indiana, both SMU, they deserve to be there. Same with Clemson. They deserve to be there over Alabama. And it's just annoying to me how people hold water for the SEC like they're this mega, you know, unbeatable conference when they had a suspiciously they had a bad year. This was a bad year for the SEC. And I don't think the committee made a mistake putting in SMU or Indiana. They clearly deserve to be there. But you're gonna see this now that we have playoffs. It's gonna be like? It's gonna be reminiscent of March Madness, where we all have that discussion once the brackets are released. Oh, who got snubbed? Who got in, who shouldn't have been in. You're gonna see that now with the whole playoffs, which is fine. But I just worry that because of the oversized influence of the SEC, they're going to start.
For now.
Well,
For now.
I
I
don't
don't
know.
see it changing.
I do because
do.
now, see, here's the thing, and I think I brought this up last week, is all of a sudden people in Alabama are going to find out that now that you can pay players out in the open, there's a lot more money than what a used car salesman can deliver in a McDonald's bag when you're dealing with places like Oregon that has Nike backing them, or in the case of like even Maryland, where literally Under Armour can just be like, yeah, here you go. Here's
Or-
$10 million.
Or schools,
Hold up.
or schools that
ahead.
have fantastically wealthy donors, like say Southern Methodist,
Yes.
who've discovered that. I mean, this is what SMU got in trouble for in the '80s, that got their program disbanded. Except they can do it all above board now.
Yeah. So, I have a feeling that one of the reasons why the SEC is struggling so much this year is not because the rest of the SEC can pay their players. It's because everyone else can pay their players. And all of a sudden, people are going, maybe I don't want to be a second string when I can go be a first string somewhere else and make a pile of money.
And that's really what Indiana was too. Indiana was just the MAC All-Stars.
Yeah.
They were all their team was almost entirely made up of the best players in the Mid-American Conference from 2023. And they put them all on one team together, and turns out that's a pretty good team.
Yeah. I mean, heck, even like Louisville's like doing great right now, just grabbing everybody's quarterback, and they all want to go play there. It's
The
if you
reason
got
I think it
cash-
won't matter, or may not matter as much in the short term, is because of that television contract the SEC has with ESPN. ESPN has long been fond of pretending that anyone they don't have a television contract with doesn't exist. The NHL basically vanished from ESPN for a decade because of that. ESPN has always been fond of building up the names and the reputations of any sport or any conference that will sign a TV deal with them. And because of that, I mean, do I think that means that the SEC's guaranteed to get a bunch of championships? No, it doesn't. But will they remain in the conversation? Will they remain prominent in the conversation, regardless of their performance in games like the Ohio State-Tennessee game? Yes, they will, because of that contract with ESPN.
Oh, 100%. Like you're telling me the Mouse isn't playing games in the background? Absolutely. I think we all remember the number of times that ESPN was constantly going to bat for Notre Dame when their contract with NBC was up, and they would talk about so much they would even get them into BCS games they didn't belong in, because they were so desperate to get the Irish, and the Irish weren't leaving. But it was one of the things where like ESPN's like, we did all this for you, now we're not going to acknowledge you again.
Well, I think going back to what was said, with the whole rise of the transfer portal and NIL, I mean, it levels the playing field, especially in college football. FBS football is going to be there's going to be a lot more parity going forward because of NIL, the transfer portal, kids realizing, hey, I can make money in college with my name, image, and likeness. I can do it at X school because Y school is not going to give me playing time. They're going to go there. And listen, whether or not that needs to be regulated more or whatever, that's a whole different discussion. But for this discussion, it's definitely had an impact on football play this year. It had an impact on play last year as well. So
Yep.
I do think going forward, it's going to be interesting to see, 4 or 5 years down the road, what the landscape of college sports looks like, especially football. Real quick though, you mentioned Maryland. No, Maryland. As far as football goes, Kevin Plank can write $1 billion. That's not gonna fix Maryland football. I all the Under Armour money in the world will not fix Maryland football. Maybe basketball, but not football. But your
Well, I
Phil
mean, I,
Knights.
I would jump in there real quick though, since you're jumping back. I wanted to jump back on something else that that Blue said before we get into the Under Armour discussion, because I'm at Adidas school too, and we lost a basketball coach because they were just doing stuff a little bit early.
Coach of the
Now,
dorm
granted,
rooms.
he's having a meltdown right now anyway. That's fine, and I could do that, but that's for a different pod. Trust me, that will come. We will have a basketball pod. It will be there. We've already in discussion about it, and I can't wait to talk about that. But you're talking about the TV contracts. Well, the thing is, the schools can't directly, as far as I'm aware, fund the NIL. Now they can go out and they can build a recruitment base, and then they can have an NIL fund. But that money that's coming in for those TV contracts, that's separate. Also, they've built a pretty big base on the SEC side of things to use that money for other stuff. So now you're paying off stadiums. Now you're paying off a bazillion trainers, spas where the athletes are staying, all that other stuff that you were doing to lure them in so that you could be the SEC and be a top dog. Now it doesn't mean nothing if Brown Foreman can just come in and be like, yeah, sure. Here's $20 million. Go buy a football team, which is what we did last year, to be fair. I mean, Louisville did that last year. And how did that work out? It got them to the ACC championship game. Where were we at the previous year? Crap. And where were we at the previous years? Crap. I mean, we didn't even sniff the ACC championship game. This is our first time that we've ever been. And it was because all of a sudden we could just be like, hey, you want to come play? We're pretty good at putting football on, and now we got a new coach. And also, thank you so much, Cincinnati.
Now, I do worry though with the unintended consequence of the whole NIL and transfer portal is, are we going to see the landscape become a situation of the haves and the have-nots, and those haves are the your traditional P4 schools, and the have-nots are the group of 5, and maybe some of the lesser known Power 4 schools, because the upper echelon can afford to just dump money on players and provide them the best of the best equipment, the best locker rooms, the best trainers, the best education for some who want that. Meanwhile, your group of 5 schools, your MAC institutions, CUSA, they're left with the scraps, and that I feel like it's going to create a situation where it's not an equal playing field. It'll be like MLB, where you have the owners who have the money and are willing to spend it because they have it, but you have the others who may not have the money to do it, and they rarely go out and spend it, and as a result, they can't really compete. That's my biggest worry with this. And some would say, well, to an extent, you already had this pre-NIL and transfer portal, but I don't know if. Go ahead.
No, I agree. It's a concern. You run into the possibility of MAC schools and CUSA schools and Sunbelt schools essentially becoming, they're the farm system. They're the AAA teams for the Power 4 schools. You let Western Kentucky develop your quarterback, and then you take him and go win a national championship with him. You run into issues like that, and it's something that I think. I mean, it may not get addressed in the short term, but it's going to have to be at some point in time because it's going to become more and more of a problem.
I mean, I understand where you're coming from with it, but at the same time, what has happened is because of how corrupt parts of the South are. They were doing it anyway, and everyone was looking the other way because Go Dogs or Roll Tide, okay, or whatever the Gator thing is. I guess it's Jorts, and then I guess you had LSU down there with the Corn Dogs. You know, they were already doing it, and everyone else, because Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State literally fired a coach because some guys got some tattoos. You're telling me
Oh yeah, Grim's
that
Pretzel.
Cam Newton's down there getting a car and a bag of money that he won't talk about is perfectly fine.
That's
See, this is the part where now everything's above board, and just let things settle first. Figure out then where your tweaks are. Okay, we're gonna do a cap. Also, who's gonna make sure that the SEC is actually adhering to the cap and not going like, yes, we're totally with the cap now. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Here's your, your free Corvette. That's the other part of the thing that that's going to make me frustrated. So I'm perfectly fine seeing the SEC for a while just get the snot kicked out of them. I love it. It's great. This should happen for a little bit. We should be able to recalibrate, figure out where we're at as a sport, and then make some rules, and then figure out how to make sure the people in the South don't cheat.
No, you're not wrong. But real quick, my worry is, and this is what I mentioned when I said the SEC has a lot of influence. My worry is the SEC can look at these regulations and say, "Screw you! I'm taking my ball and I'm going home." And they'll take the Big Ten with them. They'll form their own little super conference and do their own little thing, leaving everybody else to deal with. Okay,
like if
maybe.
if I'm the Big Ten and I'm sitting there looking like my biggest competition's leaving, and I can just get national champions all day long, while the SEC sitting there by themselves and just be like, "Yes, we have an SEC championship." That's cute.
If it works that way, or there's the other possibility is like Silex said, something happens like what happened with kart and IndyCar in open wheel racing. Yeah, initially there were a couple of teams that were mad about some regulations in kart and went off and formed IndyCar by themselves. And for a few years, it was stupid that there were basically two leagues that competed side by side without ever following each other. But eventually, the money and the attention started going towards IndyCar, so ever slowly they all bailed for IndyCar over kart, and it effectively killed kart. Now it also had the side effect of effectively killing open wheel racing in the U.S. for years, and everyone stopped caring about it completely outside of the Indy 500. But that's the other thing is if something does split off like that, what kind of damage would it do to the sport? But I think that's a hypothetical that's like 6 steps down the road. Cross that bridge when you get to it. But I think that the idea that the Big Ten wouldn't follow the SEC there, I think they would, or at least it would be very tempting to.
Well, why wouldn't you just? If your biggest competition left, and you just declare yourself national champions, or pretty much guarantee yourself a national champion, and have way more legitimacy on it, why wouldn't you stay?
Because then there's the same. Then you run into the same problem we had when we created the BCS to begin with. The same problem you had where you got split champions.
Yep. Remember the BCS Bowl Alliance, Bowl Coalition, all that crap? It'd just be rehashing that, And at some point, at some point, because officially the NCAA does not crown a national champion in FBS, and at some point the NCAA has to step in, and they should honestly do that. I don't know why they don't do that. Someone who's more knowledgeable about that would know, but.
I can tell you right now, the reason why they don't is because the college football playoff organization does not want to give them any gumption on it. So they've created their own playoff thing that's separate, because the NCAA has got the other divisions lock, stock, and barrel under their control. But the people that make up the committee don't want to give up that control and want to have that option of breaking off from the NCAA if they can.
I can see down the road, hypothetically, if the worst timeline comes to fruition, we see the SEC, Big Ten, and Notre Dame just go off, do their own thing, have their own little tournament. We'll have two national champions, and we won't know who's the real national champion. It'll happen. If the SEC and Big Ten and Notre Dame see a financial incentive to go off, do their own thing, set their own rules, make more money, and have more prestige and more eyeballs on their own tournament, their own season, they'll go and do it. And
I mean, the thing is, though, is if the SEC breaks off outside of the fact that they expanded to Texas and Oklahoma might help them a little bit. But if it was the old SEC, there's not enough eyeballs in the South to warrant that.
No, I agree. If this was strictly the old SEC and the old Big Ten, there's not enough. So I don't think it will work. But because we've seen this new round of conference realignment and expansion, they could realistically do it now and have enough eyeballs to come in and watch. Not even in the South. There'll be people across the country who would tune in just to see how it will work. It's like the perfect example, Live Golf. Live Golf versus the PGA Tour. Two things doing the exact same thing. Live Golf works because there's enough eyeballs who tune in to see how does this work, because they're not doing the same rules as the PGA Tour does in some aspects, and people still tune in to watch it. So it would be like that. People would still tune in, not only in the South, but across the country, just to see, oh, I want to watch, Alabama take on Rutgers. I don't know why you'd watch that, because it's not really a competitive game, but,
Bloodbath,
people would still tune in to watch it. So
At this point, the Big Ten has members on each side of the country. They've got West Coast and East Coast teams. They got the TV markets on the West Coast. They've got the TV markets in New York and New England.
To be fair,
the SEC
nobody
doesn't
in
have.
New York watches college football. Just to be fair, but go ahead.
I mean, they may not watch it, but it's part of their cable package, whether they watch it or not. But it's you've got the Big Ten on each side of the country like that. SEC is not super far from that at this point. I mean, with the realignment going the way it is, or heck, even if they manage to coax the ACC into joining such an arrangement with the Big Ten and SEC, something like that, suddenly you've got a conference with you've got sort of a combination of super conferences with 30 or 40 teams. They cover the span of the country. At that point, split them up into an American and National Conference, and then have them play in some kind of Super Bowl at the end.
That's a good point. And just to go ahead and wrap up, because I did have the two topics, and we're basically dancing around my last topic, and then we will get to the other topic. So now, outside of what we're talking about with realignment, what changes would you make to the transfer portal system? Because right now, everybody found out they're going to a bowl game, and half the teams are like, "Oh, I'm in the portal. Sorry, bye."
You got to get it outside of the bowl season. That's the biggest thing. Is they've got to move it a little bit later. Put it in January if you have to, because it's just.
But
it's at a point now where it's at a point now where they're
academics, right? Because this is all about academics, right?
In theory, but
wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
The struggle they're running into right now is it overlaps in such a manner with these bowl games that it's pointless. The other thing, and I think that the bigger thing, and I've argued this before, is that there are too many freaking bowl games, and we shouldn't be having a lot of these games. I mean, I know we like to pretend it's a great reward to have these guys get to spend their Christmas playing in an empty stadium in Shreveport, Louisiana, and getting to spend Christmas Day at a Holiday Inn. But really, that's not a particularly great reward for anyone. It costs the schools money because they can't sell tickets to these god awful games. Realistically,
You're awfully close to topic number 2. I wanted to just talk about the transfer portal.
Gotcha. But yeah, I think in terms of the transfer portal, I think you've got to somehow get it away from the bowl games because it's creating it de-incentivizes playing them.
So my question is how do you address the academic side of things? Because like they didn't come to play school, or did they come to play school?
Well, they ain't getting paid to go to school, but they're getting paid to play football.
Well, they're also getting paid to keep their eligibility, so which does require at least some school, unless you go to North Carolina.
We're on to Clemson.
Can I just say I really appreciate the Cardale Jones reference, like
You're welcome.
A+ material.
You know, I love that he actually did get a chance to show off that he was a pretty decent quarterback because, you know, he if it hadn't been for the injuries at the end of that 2014 season, nobody would remember who he is.
Yeah. We actually have a very famous quote from one of our like famous is in like it's locally famous. It's okay. We're only like the number 2 NBA like market, but it's fine. Like the Louisville basketball one is we had one that we beat up on somebody and he gets up in front of the mic and he goes, "Of course we beat them up. They're one of those academic schools." And it's like, you know, face palms. Like, could you at least pretend? But yeah, I mean, I agree that like it should be. I hate because like the thing with bowl games, because now I'm going to segue. So the thing with bowl games is like I was in marching band when I was in college, and so we actually really loved the fact that like, hey, we could potentially spend Christmas in freaking Hawaii because that was one of the options that we had, and we always would want it. And then if you were a good enough football team, though, you didn't get to go there. So you kind of want to suck just a little bit, just enough to make it to the Hawaii Bowl. But instead,
Or the Bahamas Bowl.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, yes. Oh my gosh, yes. I'd still be down. Like I don't care that the stands are empty. You think I care as a student that the university's having to pay to fly me down there to go march on
a
a field?
2-night stay at the Atlantis? Oh, let's go.
Oh no. It is not a 2-night
heck
stay.
yeah.
I know.
If you've ever
You're there
done
for
a
a
bowl
week.
game, they take us down there for a week. And there's different events. We're doing pep rallies, you know, and then of course they're like we would do the Orange Bowl. We would get tickets to you had your choice. You could go Disney World or you could go to Universal Studios. Like there was the option as part of the package. And as someone who's been to Disney World too many times, I was like, yeah, absolutely. I would totally like to go see the part that I wasn't allowed to see. Or you also had the option just to go to the beach, and you just would get an extra stipend to go spend on beach things.
But the double-edged sword of that is that, yeah, you might get to go to, you know, Boca or the Bahamas or Hawaii, or you might end up in Detroit or Boise or Shreveport or Mobile.
I've done the Mobile Bowl,
Or Nashville.
which actually the Mobile Bowl wasn't bad. I've done it twice. One of them, we almost lost our head coach during. But like we were there, and it was the thing because Petrino's going to Petrino. But I didn't mind it. It was warm, much warmer than it is here. It was a neat kind of like area to go explore. Plus, you get extra money. That's the other thing is that you don't understand is as a college kid in the marching band, they're paying you every day you're on the road. And they're giving you stuff constantly. I mean, I got stuff from when I was at the Final Four. I got a whole bag full of just awesome swag that, I didn't even know existed until we went to the Final Four. So it's go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, there are 47 bowl games, including the CFP and the Celebration Bowl in the FCS. 47. That is a lot of bowl games. And a lot of them are kind of, and this is no offense to the teams that are playing in them, they're lower tier, not as prestigious bowl games. And there's been a lot of chatter as Bluespeak mentioned, hey, do we have too many bowl games? Because I guarantee you, few people are turning into the 68 Ventures Bowl to watch that. I don't know who's playing in that bowl, but I know most people are not going to watch that.
Well, a big thing with the bowls is the bowls are actually a money system for the university too. The university is going to get money to go to those bowl games, especially if they win. There's also a cash prize. There's other stuff at play. Now, the one bowl game that they shouldn't get rid of is, of course, has been unanimously, well, not unanimously, because I think it got like number 2, I think, on one of the other polls. But they surveyed all of the major news organizations, and apparently the non-playoff bowl that everyone wants their team to go to is the Pop-Tart Bowl. And the thing is if the rest of the bowls would look at the Pop-Tart Bowl and see why everybody wants to go to the Pop-Tart Bowl, because it's fun and it's wild and it's crazy and it's silly and everybody's having a good time.
I will throw a caveat on the moneymaker for the school thing. Like I said, a lot of the smaller schools, because they can't sell tickets, they have to pay for to cut their losses on the tickets they didn't sell. A lot of the smaller schools end up losing money on bowl games.
We never lost money on any of our bowl games. Now
I don't think OU's ever made at Ohio University, which is where I went. I don't think OU's ever made money on a bowl game.
Really? Did they win them?
Yeah.
There's always the cash prize.
And but with the cost of ferrying a marching band and a football team down to wherever they happen to be playing, plus the cost of tickets that didn't get sold, a lot of them end up losing money. There was I'd have to go digging. There was an article about it several years ago that one of the major sports publications put together. But they talked about how a lot of the smaller schools do end up losing money in bowls.
See, we always have a really good fan base that travels, because like my family would always go down, and in fact, they were asking me if I wanted to go down for the Tony the Tiger Bowl, and I'm thinking like that's a bit on the nose, but because Love was going down there to play, but it for some fan bases it is the vacation, like for example, like at University of Kentucky, anytime they play at Atlantis or wherever, Cancun, anytime there's one of those, they'll pencil that in, and that will just be the family vacation for the year. And I can understand, like, Ohio University maybe doesn't have that kind of like crazy fan base, and maybe some of those should be trimmed. But at the same time, like, part of that's on your fan base, right?
Again, I'm looking for the article here, and I'd have to. It would take far longer to find than we have time to find it. But I mean, there were a number of schools. I mean, even places like Auburn that were possibly losing money if they were in the cases when they were going to smaller bowl games.
Well, again, but that all falls on the fan base, right?
It does to a point, but you've also got to consider: does the fan base want to go to a bowl game that when a disappointing mid-tier bowl game when your team had a bad season?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like,
that still smells like a problem with the fan base, because like even when we had a mediocre season, we would still show up in droves because, hey, I get to have a vacation and go watch my favorite team play. I mean, like the fact that people are just being oh, well, I'm not playing for a national title. I'm not going to go anywhere. Well, guess what you are? A really crappy fan.
Well, okay, no. It depends on the school. It largely depends on the school. Okay, if you told someone from NIU, just to pick on another MAC school, NIU, hey, you have a chance to go to, I don't know, the Pinstripe Bowl. I guarantee you, a lot of their fans would go because NIU does not. It's not the best school football wise. Okay, outside of Jordan Lynch, it's not the best school football wise, and they don't really go to a lot of high, notable bowl games, if that makes sense. Conversely, if you told someone from Clemson or Alabama, hey, you have a chance to go to the Hawaii Bowl, why would they show up? Why would people go? That's a bowl game, that's lower tier. It's not something that they would want to see. What's the point? So it depends on the fan base, but the bowl as well.
Well, no, because all you've done is confirm the fact that there are certain fan bases that are crappy fan bases.
It's not.
No, it is 100%. If you're not willing to travel and go have a nice vacation, like if Alabama was offered the Hawaii Bowl,
If
you're telling me that there's not enough of Alabama fans that have never been to Hawaii that wouldn't go like, you know what? Hey,
most-
guess what?
they can
Let's
afford it,
go. Also problem. But still, again, that's the whole thing that I'm talking about earlier. The point is, though, is that like, hey, you got to go support your team. Now, granted, it's a good thing Seawolf's not here. The Detroit Bowl. Okay, I can understand being like, oh, I'm not going to go to that bowl. Or the Idaho Bowl. Okay, I could totally understand not going to that bowl. But like New York City, even New York City Bowl, like, okay, fine. You get to go spend a week in the city. I mean, that's not a terrible time to spend during your Christmas, right? Because like New York City's gorgeous during Christmas.
and New York City's notoriously cheap during the holidays.
Well, But hey, if you go through a package that's provided by your university, you'll save a little bit of money.
It's not, and I get what you're saying, but you have to look at it like as a fan from Alabama or Texas. To them, because they're so used to winning, they're so
Okay,
used
Texas
to
fans can
playing.
afford to go to Hawaii and would love it.
If
I know, but
But
you have
if
to look
it-
at it from there. Go ahead.
if I'm gonna spend money, if I'm gonna go out of my way to, I got one vacation I'm gonna take. I've got one chance to take a week and go somewhere for part of a trip. Am I gonna take it to go watch a mediocre mid-tier bowl game? Probably not. It doesn't matter if I'm a big fan of one of the teams in the game or not. I'm not gonna. It's not a big draw.
And a lot of some of these people who are going are college kids, and they're not even playing in the games. They go to the school, but they can't afford, to take all these trips, and that might be their only trip they get to take. And why would you go to, no offense, Mobile, Alabama? I've been there. Not the best city. Okay? It sucks. Right? No offense to Alabama, but why would you do that?
I mean,
and
last time I
again-
was there for a football game, we were thrilled to be there because like it was snowstorming back home. So
Oh, well. Okay, I get that. But yeah, no, if I'm a fan of Alabama, why would I go to a low tier game? We're not used to that. That's not the standard for us. Conversely, if Maryland made like the Armed Forces Bowl, heck yeah, I would go. You kidding me? That's like the pinnacle for Maryland football right there. Of course I'm going to go because it probably won't happen again for a very long time. And so I also think it depends on the school that you support. If
Well,
you're used to
and similarly, I mean, if your team does make if you're a team that's used to success and makes a mid-tier bowl game, you see them play. I'm just to throw out an example. Say if you're Michigan and you make a bowl, you have a kind of a mediocre season, you make a bowl game against I'm trying to even think of a good mid-tier example. You make your bowl game against Toledo. Miami of Ohio or Toledo. It's like that's a game you could see in Ann Arbor, with your student pass for, on a typical Saturday afternoon. There's nothing special about traveling to, some far off place to see that game.
I think the big part we have a little chitlin that's making some noise. I think the big part that we're missing out on this discussion is who actually travels for bowl games. So you think about the cost of a ticket to go to a Final Four for your school, to go to one of those big time bowl games. It's going to be folks that would be willing to go like, you know what? Sure, I don't care that we're 6-5. We're gonna go to Hawaii, and we might be able to watch our team win, but we'll spend the whole week there on this package that's being provided. And those are the kind of people that travel with the school. Because again, I know that we're talking about football right now, but in basketball world, even when Louisville didn't make the NCAA tournament and had to go down to the NIT, there were Louisville fans that were still there. And they showed up in force, and we got all the way to I think the championship that year. And it wasn't because we were too good of a fan base to go and support our teams in the lower tier system. It was, oh shoot, I get to go on a vacation to go visit someplace. Heck yeah! Also be able to watch basketball the entire time I'm there. Yes. I mean, granted, I know that we're kind of crazy about college basketball, but the people that travel to these bowl games, they're the people with disposable income that can just go. Now, are there too many of them? I agree. In case in point, like the Detroit Bowl, nobody wants to go to Detroit yet. Nobody wants to go to Iowa ever. Places that you just don't want to go, for a winter vacation. Now, if you have the opportunity to spend Christmas in Disney World, you know what? That's not a bad deal. And you get to watch some football? Heck yeah. Oh, the university's got discounted tickets because the marching band is marching down the street, Main Street in Disneyland? Sure, let's do that. Because I did that, and it was awesome. You got to kind of put yourself in the mindset of the people that actually go to these kind of things. I mean, my parents are super fans. They were there for the national title that some people say never occurred, but it totally occurred because we beat Michigan, and there's not a single Ohio State fan that I've met that said that didn't happen. So,
wait, for what game?
Basketball.
Okay.
Basketball.
That one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, technically it never happened, but
Not according to any Ohio State fan I've met.
Listen, I watched that game, so it happened.
Yeah, and those are the kind of people that go and make that happen. Now, if you're, I understand what you were saying about the smaller schools, but then again, that's also kind of at the school and the fan base level where you haven't made sports to be an important thing. It just because I mean I know I'm from Louisville. It's a super sports school. I get it, but that is 100% something that. To me, it's on these smaller schools where if you don't get people interested in your team.
Well, the way to do that is to win, but it's difficult to win at small schools. So it's kind of
It's worse now. I mean, yeah, I get it.
Okay, I feel like it's easier in basketball. It's easier in basketball to do because there's more parity. There's more parity in men's college basketball than there is in college football. So it's easier for small teams to do that and build up that loyal fan base. I don't think it's that easy in football.
It's also much cheaper to transport a basketball team than it is to transport a football team.
I mean, I guess my argument on that would be Western. Western would always have a big showing. Western Kentucky would always have a big showing. Yeah. With Big Red, the
mascot.
Yeah, the mascot of Nightmares.
Listen, he's no Gritty, okay?
But they would show up, right? And they would fill a stadium. I remember watching them in a bowl game, and granted, the entire stadium was just the Hilltoppers, and that's a small school. Because guess what? They got to go to a bowl game. Now, whoever they were playing didn't bother showing up, and So thanks everybody for being on the show, and if you enjoyed the podcast, please like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you guys after Christmas.
Bye. Have a beautiful time.